Good morning, Stamp World. Welcome to edition number 1 of the Stamp Experts. I'm Brian Croft, the owner of SimplyStamps.com, and today we have the amazing guest, Paul DeMartini, and Paul runs Trodat USA, which is one of the largest providers of the rubber stamp and self-inking stamps in the industry. I'll let him tell you more about his company and his experience. So, Paul, welcome. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. A pleasant surprise.
So, tell us a little bit about Paul and Trodat.
Well, as you mentioned, we're the largest provider of stamp mechanisms and parts and raw materials to the industry and around the world. 180 countries, so rubber stamps are everywhere. And we're the largest and probably the best and most highest quality manufacturer because we make a lot of stamp in Austria, which is also interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to my company's success really goes back to the invention of the plastic stamp. So everybody thinks of a rubber stamp as a wood-handled stamp with a stamp pad in the old days. And we all know now it's become this plastic device, which goes up and down, hits an ink pad, etc. Well, that was a major invention back in the day, in the 1980s, and that just exploded the stamp market. It became so easy to make a stamp, clean to use a stamp, and it just made everybody, and it was less expensive than cutting a piece of wood and drilling a hole and sticking the end up. So it just was a revolutionary event, and the founder of my company, Mr. Used, is the guy who invented it. And that's really the story of the company, in the big picture. Since then, we've expanded and grown, and I run the U.S. operation, which is about a third of the company's stamp business is now based in the U.S.
Yeah.
When I started, it was not that way, so I'll take that as a personal accomplishment.
Yeah,
I say I use my effort and their money.
Perfect. Yeah, we've both been in the stamp industry for a long time now, and it's funny, if I'm in a local restaurant or talking to one of my doctor or lawyer friends, they're all like, rubber stamps, what is that all about? That honestly, part of my inspiration over the many years I've been doing this is wow, this is a large industry. I've been to Austria. I've seen the robots that they developed in that culture on how to make the stamps. And I don't know, it's just something that's I think about it as an evergreen kind of product, where it's just going to be around forever, so it's not going to be, it's not going to be the next ChatGPT or AI or all this crazy stuff that happens in our world. It's the boring old rubber stamp. And I don't know, it's just kind of it's a cool product. You and I have talked a lot about this over the years. I think you taught me this one little line, what's somebody's favorite word in the vocabulary? It's typically their name. And then, boy, if you give them a stamp with their name on it, there's just this weird dopamine that goes off. It's not even on Instagram. It's just shit created with Mr. Used 100 years ago, making, just that kind of hit when you see your address or you see your company logo.
That's one of my favorite things is I love to give a person who doesn't even know what I do for a living. Sometimes I'll have a stamp made with their name on it and stuff, and I'll give it to them, and I just you watch them play. I mean, for 15 minutes, they'll sit there. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And people like to see their name in print, and there's no simpler way of doing that. But that's a funny emotional attachment to the product.
Yeah.
But I think, I bet you we probably manufacture and ship 40 to 50 million stamps a year. And it's an amazing fact that we're still around because people think office products, and that's the least amount of the stamp business now is in office product.
Yeah.
It's far from it. And, technology's helped the product because the internet has made it so easy to buy customized anything. And a customized stamp is one of the most popular, or I'd say the most commonly ordered products. And it's important that it's easy to order, but it's also important that it's spontaneity. If you're not expecting to buy the stamp, but when you buy, when you're closing a house, all of a sudden there's an opportunity to buy a stamp. And you're like, oh, yeah, I could use that. Or when you're buying a business card, or when you're buying anything that's personal and then a stamp is tagged on at the end for $20, you're like, wow, I'll do that,
Yeah.
And that's exploded the market. As you're a benefactor of it.
Yeah, sure.
Done an extremely job. And I'll leave other names out of it, but the largest customization company of stamps, wasn't even around 15 years ago. Which to me tells you that, wow, if you really focus on the product, you can sell a lot of them.
Absolutely. And watching the evolution of the product, when I first came to the industry, we couldn't really make a logo stamp. It was just really hard to do, right? Or you couldn't make a stamp with different fonts, right? There's these old machines, they use Ludlows and all these things that when I first came to the industry, my dad was teaching me. And then the computers came around with all kinds of fonts. And then the laser engravers came around with all kinds of ways to kind of personalize. And that's something
Brian, what I think would really be cool on this type of act you're doing is somehow to show, a few production sheets of all the different stamps that you make every day. Yeah. And 90% of them are images that people would never even think of,
Yeah. That's a good idea. Well, I'll get to our editing team. We made 600 stamps today, and here they are.
So this is the time in the video that I wanted to show some people examples of stamps. So you have a teacher stamp, you have a notary stamp, you have a signature stamp, address stamp. These are some of my favorites here. Let's just go through these years of cool logos for logo stamps. So, handmade in Florida, Cake Ambition, Belmita Italian Restaurant. And we have literally pages and pages and pages of awesome logo stamps that we've made for the winery. I don't know what a carve is. Well, I do, but So-and-so Bar, the Adirondack Chair Company, Americana, Citizens of Heaven. So anyway, back to the programming, but here is some really fun logo stamps that we've made throughout the years. Perfect. We'll end on one of my favorite spots in the world, a cigar club.
And we'll remove all the personal information, but like the logo stamp for the coffee shop in Philadelphia, or the notary stamp for the lady that just started her notary business in Hawaii. Like, I don't know, dude. I do that. I've been doing this for 25 years. When I get up from my desk and I go to the bathroom because I drink a bunch of water and trying to be healthy, I literally stop by the laser engraver and like, ooh, what are we making today? I'm like a kid in a candy store. It's so silly, but I don't know. I enjoy it. You touched on it, but the emotion that people get when they stamp is something that's, I don't know. I don't see a lot of products that, you have a blank piece of paper, you have this plastic device, you stamp it, and you're, oh wow, now you're kind of, I don't know, something I've always enjoyed, that emotion. I love emotion in general. I'm an emotional guy. So where do we want to go next? What are you thinking about? Like, what's going on in the industry? I know that in my experience, when I first came to the industry, the phone book and word of mouth was the way to rock the world. And my dad and our rubber stamp company had done great for 40 years before that. And then there's a lot of transition over, obviously, to e-commerce and Amazon and all the different websites. And my personal opinion is that, I don't know that the rubber stamp industry is gonna grow at 80% a year, but I also don't think it's gonna die at 80% a year. I think it's just kind of a cool new internet that you mentioned earlier that allows people to get products. But it's also we saw a fad maybe 15 years ago when we had, in my opinion, with new designs on cool, fun, inspirational address stamps. I never knew I really wanted an address stamp until I saw that good looking, awesome design palm tree and it said Neptune Beach, Florida. And I'm like, hey, that's where I live. That feels right to me. And I bought one, So I don't know what my question is other than what do you think about the future of the industry of the stamp world?
I think that, look, we know that the most common use of a stamp is a name and address stamp by far. And I think a name and address stamp is all about solving a problem. And that problem is the painful experience of writing your name and address on a piece of paper. Now it's like, I already know this. I hate doing this.
How many times do I have to write this?
Why can't I get this down to 5 seconds? Why did it take me 15?
Yeah.
So I always say a name and address stamp is like the solution to a painful problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that yes, with the internet and the mail volume changing, and you don't write your name on an envelope quite as often, or you don't write your name on various thank you cards and whatever. You still do. You maybe do a little less, but you still do.
Sure.
So that pain still exists. And the fact of the matter is that 40 million people every year change their address, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 40 million people that would like to have that little bit of pain changed for $20. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
So as long as people are relocating, I think there's always going to be a chance to sell stamps.
Yeah.
And there's also going to be very practical applications always out there to put a date on something at a certain time and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also use, one of the most common uses of a stamp was for the check industry.
Mm-hmm.
And, I never write checks anymore, but you still get that check every once in a while. You'll get maybe a check every month or 2 months. And
My sister dropped off one this morning. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? But I'll figure it out. I need the money from her.
Right. And then you got to sit there and you got to sign the back, and you got to sign the back, and you got to write your account number on it. And again, we sell to all the big check printers, and they said, hey, I can't believe I'm selling 70% less checks, but I'm only selling 35% less stamps. And the reason why is because whether, you might only write 5 checks a month, but even so, you still want to have that stamp so that it makes it easier for you to process the check. We could go on about some old school uses and new school uses, but there's always a baseline opportunities. People are relocating. They have a new address. Hey, you know what? They got a new checking account. They got this. They got that. They got all these things.
Not that it's a new market, and maybe I see what I look for in life. I'm always trying to figure out how to enjoy more rubber stamps, but I'm seeing a gifting component come into it. And the two markets that I'm kind of seeing are, we have a couple of customers of ours that are doing a great job marketing teacher stamps. So what they'll do is they'll take a picture of their other kid's first grade teacher, and they're always wanting to give some sort of $20-$30 gift for the teacher, right? So then they have a picture of it, they run the picture through Adobe whatever, and they turn the picture into black and white, and now it's like from the desk of Miss Smith, and it's her picture on it. Miss Smith gets this stamp, and now she's like, oh my God, I'm going to use this stamp for my entire teaching career, So it's kind of like Miss Smith all of a sudden sees a picture of herself, and she's able to stamp her students like, great job, Miss Smith. So we'll put the Facebook thumbs up next to her picture, next to great job. And all of a sudden, wow, this stamp is like all of a sudden relevant in our society today, Or the other thing I'm seeing a lot of, we all have friends that are entrepreneurs that want to start their own business, right? So I find myself looking on LinkedIn or Facebook or Insta or wherever I am, and I see somebody, hey, started their new business. Well, I'll go to their website and I'll find their logo on their website. I'll pull their logo down and I'll turn it into a stamp, and then I'll mail them a stamp with their logo on it. And it's like I just sent them like $100 or something, and it was a damn $20 stamp. They get so emotional about that attachment of this silly little product that you and I had spent 20-something plus years building our families in this industry. So, kind of fun.
Really, and the reality is you explained a very sophisticated stamp using somebody's picture and all the rest. Yeah. So you can even dumb it down and just have the ladies, from the desk of and put her name, right? Yep. You don't even have to have the picture.
Right.
It's meaningful, because of that emotional seeing their name in a more formal printed way. That's really cool. You mentioned the gifts. again, one of the industries that we know sells a lot of stamps are, mortgage companies and things, and real estate agents. And what a better gift to somebody to a new homeowner than to give them a name and address stamp, right?
We see a lot of the realtors and the mortgage companies doing that closing gift, right? Because they're so emotional. I just bought this house. They went through the process of filling out all the paperwork, getting approved for the mortgage, sitting down, signing the table. There's a notary stamp when you're notarizing your mortgage, and then it's all done. We bought our house, and then the agent or the broker gives the address stamp to the customer as like a thank you gift, a closing gift kind of thing. And man, it's a whole nother level of thank you. We made it. We bought the house, So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
No, it really is.
Yeah. So I don't know that we do slightly have different businesses, right? So your business is selling to people like me in the industry, and then I sell to the end user. That's typically how it's set up. So I don't know if you'll have the answer to this question, but I'll answer the question first, and then you answer the question. Do you have one stamp that you remember, like your favorite stamp ever that you were a part of, whether it was you guys made it or you remember somebody else making it? Mine's funny. Mine's slightly controversial. I wish it wasn't today, but it is. I got to go back and look at the exact year. I could probably Google it and find it out. But there was a TV show that started sometime early mid-2000s, and it was called The Apprentice, right? And The Apprentice was with some guy named Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right. And his whole thing was you're fired. He'd have this boardroom and he'd fire people or whatever. And obviously it's a little controversial today, whether your political views are, but I remember getting an email from NBC in New York, and they wanted us to make like 5,000 "You're Fired" stamps that were like 8 inches by 4 inches, which is a big rubber stamp. And now I got to do 5,000 of them. And we made them. We did it. They put them in like their press package as they were trying to promote the product to other NBC affiliates throughout the country. I think I still have one of them. And that's it's my silly one, but it's my kind of favorite "You're Fired" stamp. So I don't know. What do you think about that? You got any great stories of that?
I remember when we were contacted by one of the owners of Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
Okay. Yep.
And they wanted to, they were very concerned about money in politics.
I remember this story.
And they wanted to, offer stamps for the general public so that every time you had a dollar bill or whatever, you would stamp this message on the dollar bill. I'm trying to remember what the message was. It might have been.
It was like, "Where's George?"
Yes.
Yeah. I think the website's still up and running, and it's I think it was Ben. I talked to Ben a couple of times because we were doing some fulfillment for them, and he's just an interesting, very successful entrepreneur. I like to talk to those kind of people, right? It's I think it was where'sgeorge.com, and they would kind of track. You would basically stamp it, and you go to the website, and you would put the serial number in the website, and it would kind of show you, last month this was in Atlanta, and now it's in Miami, and now it's over in Colorado, and it would kind of like, it was pretty cool and an interesting way to. I remember that. That's a cool stamp story. Yeah, I'm really sure some people have probably seen the "Where's George" stamps.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then the other one that really, got me excited from a business perspective more than anything else was when they came up with the round name and address stamps with the calligraphy markings.
Yeah.
I mean, now that's become pretty common, but 10, 15 years ago, that was really revolutionary, right? That you had
100% agree, yeah.
Monogram stamp. And it really provided a very higher value type of appearance and enabled all of us to, charge a more premium price because there was a little more artisan effort put into it. And that was a real hype. For me, that was one of the highlights of the industry in terms of finding a new use for the typical product, something we could all make money doing. Something that was a gift, given to people that were married. And it just was a really nice moment for me. It was about a 4 or 5 year run where we were just selling a hell of a lot of these round stamps.
Yeah.
That was fun. Fun.
Yeah, I am excited to see and participate. I want to do this for the next 20 years because I love the industry. What is the next kind of evolution? I kind of touched upon it with the teacher stamps, where you have great technology now where you can take photos and put filters on them and kind of make it an original photo to an artistic looking image and then make a stamp on it, right? So I don't know the answer. It's just kind of a pondering question. Like, what is it going to look like 10 years from now? What's going to be that cool address stamp or that cool teacher stamp? I think we have a cool product. Again, I think it's a pretty evergreen product that's going to be around. There's just going to be some fun, creative 20-somethings that are going to come up with a new usage for the product. And I don't know, I like to be a part of that and continue to, grow the business and have fun with it. So,
yeah, no, there's always a new idea out there, I mean, anything that's got a mass appeal has a mass opportunity. And, again, the common experience or the enjoyable experience of seeing your name in print will never go away,
Yeah.
Technology will never kill that. How you get your name in print, that's a challenge for us to solve, and to do it.
Hey, I get inspired when you say I got back from a board meeting and you're sitting at the board meeting with your peers that are in charge of Italy, Australia, Mexico, Canada. Like, that's just interesting to me. And more, I guess the question is, like, our culture in the United States, my perception is we use this many stamps, right? But when you go to Europe or you go to the Philippines or Japan, they use this many stamps because it's part of their culture. Speak to that for a minute. I don't know. I've always been intrigued by, like, in Japan, they use 12 times. Every person has 9 stamps. Like, what? Or I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all over the world, countries are in different, I would say, parts of the pendulum in terms of technology and where stamps apply and don't apply. And I mean, in the U.S., we would consider it to be a mature market. Mm-hmm. And in other places, it's a very growing market. And we're a mature market because stamps have been around for a while, right? But there's other markets where they've been around for a while, but they still haven't exposed themselves to the plastic technology that we started out this whole conversation on, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're still doing it the old school way. And of course, that's a major opportunity for us, is to introduce a better way in all these countries, in Malaysia and Africa and Madagascar and China and India. And there's all these places that are using a lot of stamps in the old school way. But there's certain practices in different countries that make stamps higher in demand. Like in Japan, everybody at a certain age in their life gets a Heinkel stamp, which is a personal stamp, and you've got to use it on every single thing. It's like a signature.
Yeah.
And so every human being on the country of Japan has to have a stamp. It's a law, right?
I love it.
Right. And then in China, the government, in terms of stimulating bureaucracy and keeping people consumed doing busy work, they mandate, that everybody has to have this particular type of stamp for this particular type of purpose. And, the next thing you know, we're selling 5 million stamps to, all these people in China. And other countries, it's very common that the law requires every receipt be stamped in a certain way, whether it's a restaurant receipt, a hardware receipt, or whatever. There's a requirement that every business has to have one of these stamps. And still, even in modern today, you go to the store, you might pay with your debit card or pay with your Apple phone, but sometimes they still print out the receipt. Do you want the receipt?
Sure.
In a lot of countries, you have to take that receipt.
It's funny. I had a work meeting last week in Charlotte, and I was with some of my just friends, and we went to the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which is a cool NASCAR event, right? And we literally were able to kind of rent out these Lamborghinis and Ferraris and take 2 laps around. It was a really cool experience, right? And as we were going into the, literally getting ready to get into the door of the Lamborghini, the guy pulls out a little 4912 and he stamps my hand like I've already been here, right? And I stopped and I made this big deal out of my 10 peers that have no idea what stamps are. And I'm like, hey, I looked at the stamp and it said simplystamps.com. I said, you guys never knew this. You never paid attention to this, but you just used one of my products, right? And all my friends that are in different businesses and different industries are like, oh my God, I never realized we actually use a lot more stamps, because people don't pay attention to it. You and I do, because we have to raise our children and pay our mortgage on this product, right? So that happened literally 7 days ago in this fancy event at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and there was a little stamp. The guy was checking us in, or so again, lots of different uses for stamp. But it was funny to hear the reaction, or watch the reaction of my 5 or 6 other just peers or friends of mine that own different kinds of businesses, just stop for a minute and go,
yeah, I can't say how many of my friends take pictures every time they run into a stamp somewhere and send it to me.
Yeah.
And of course they send me more pictures of my competitors' stamps.
Of course, right?
Why isn't this a product?
Yeah, you could probably go back and look at some of my LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and I'm that one dork that travels the world, and my wife hates it. We've been married 25 years. She's used to me now, but I'll be having a drink or something sitting at the bar, and I can look at the cash register. I'm like, there's a 4912. She like, we are in Rome, Italy. Stop looking at 4912s. I'm like, okay, sorry. So, all right, as we start to wrap up, anything else you're thinking about, you want to talk about on your mind, just in the overall?
No. It's always fun talking to you, Brian. I mean, it's engaging. It's, a little futuristic, and, gets us out of our daily grind. I mean,
right.
And I appreciate the time we've always had to do this type of stuff. It's really good.
Cool. Well, I got an email from somebody on my team. You guys are coming to visit us sometime later on, or beginning of the year. So,
that's January 25th.
Cool. So, well, let's wrap up this edition of the Stamp Experts version 1. You're the rookie with me. Thanks. I don't know where this is going, but hopefully it's something fun, and we provided some sort of content for our customers that get inspired by stamps, and kind of we'll go from there. So.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. I appreciate all your help and our partnership together for many years, and look forward to many more years. So,
thanks, sir. All right.
Have a great day, buddy. Thank you, man.